Daf Pei Daled Amud Aleph, the Mishnah at the top of the Yomid. Zok the Mishnah, Kol nechal b'shur hagodol, anything that is edible in a fully grown ox, yechal b'gdi arach. Then we say it's considered to be an oichel in a soft and a tender gdi. Now the issue over here is that according to Pesach, you need a kezayas of basar, of something that's edible of basar, to be nimna in the chabura and to be yotza the chiv korban pesach. So you have to be able to eat. You have to be able to eat a kazayas of basar, and you can only be included in the chabura and be nimna in the chabura if there is a kazayas of basar for each person. How do we define basar? So something which is meat is readily understood, but what about other parts of the animal? So we say that what's edible in a grown ox, we say that that is considered to be food, is considered to be meat in the Gedi Harach. The Korban Pesach comes from a Gedi, not from an ox, and it's kosher only from 8 days till the end of the first year. So the way Rashi explains it is, why are we discussing a Shor HaGodol? What does an ox have to do with the Korban Pesach? Because we say what is edible in a large ox is certainly edible in a Gedi Harach. What is not edible in a Shor HaGodol, if it's not edible in a Shor HaGodol, then in a Gedi, even a fully grown Gedi, it will be not considered to be food, even though it's not completely unedible, but it's not edible to the extent that we would consider it to be food. And therefore, it is not, you cannot use it cannot be counted for the kazayas of the Korban Pesach. So therefore, that has how we defined it. Now the Mishnah continues, Veroshe kanafayim vaschusim, and that includes the end of the shoulder blades and other cartilage. The way Rashi learns is that the Roshe kanafayim, the end of the shoulder blades, are cartilage, and there's other softer types of cartilage like by the ear, etc. So now the principle is the same. These things in the Gedi Harach, they're soft, they're edible, but in a Shor HaGodol become inedible. So the same is true with the cartilage. We consider the cartilage to be an basar and to be included in the kazayas that you're required for the Korban Pesach if it's soft enough that it would be eaten in a Shor HaGodol. But if in a Shor HaGodol they're considered too hard and they're inedible, then they are not included in the definition of basar. Dr. Gemara. Rami asks us here, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Kol nechal b'shor hagodol, yeyachal b'gdi harach, u'she'ein nechal aloi. So that implies that if it's not eaten in the Shor HaGodol, then it's not considered basar in the Gdi Harach. Ema seifa rashech nafayim v'aschusim. The seifa says the cartilage. Now v'hani loy misachli b'shor hagodol. Now these are things which are not eaten in the Shor HaGodol. So it implies that whatever the Reisha says, whatever is nechal Shor HaGodol, is considered food in the Gedi Harach. What is not, is not. Now, the Sefer says that it says v'roshi kanafayim v'aschusim, which implies that it's including that. Meaning, the Reisha says kol nechal Shor HaGodol yechal b'shor Gedi Harach. The implication is that Roshi Chanafayim Veschusim is nechal b'shor HaGodol, but it's not. Those things are inedible in the Shor HaGodol. So how does the Sefer tie in with the Reisha? So the Gemara says, "Elatanoi, it's a machlekes tanoi, v'achitani. Kol nechal b'shor HaGodol yechal b'gdi harach. Whatever it can be nechal b'shor HaGodol, that's considered basar and Gdi Harach. U'she'ein nechal loy, and what's not is not considered. Some say some say that even these things that are considered to be oichel, because since in a Shor HaGodol they can be eaten through cooking, and when you cook them they're edible, then these things are considered to be oichel in the Gedi Harach. Meaning, it's a machlekes tanoi. The Reisha says that whatever is edible in a Shor HaGodol is considered basar Shor HaGodol. What is not. And therefore the cartilage is not, and it's not considered oichel. The Seif is a machlekes and is saying, no, that he argues and he says, since the cartilage in the shor hagodol can be eaten through cooking, through extensive cooking, it is considered to be an oichel. Therefore, we do consider it to be oichel. Rav Amar Mahin Katani. Rav says we learn it's not a machlekes, but it's Mahin Katani. It's an example. This is what it means to say. Anything that can be eaten with a shor hagodol through extended cooking is considered to be a basar, is considered to be oichel in the gdi arach through roasting. And what's an example of that is Rosh Chalafayim Vaschusim. That's an example of it. It's an example of something that's not a machlekes. And the first way Mahalach was as a machlekes, that the Tanakama held that it's only if it can be eaten in the shor hagodol without extensive cooking, then it's considered to be oichel in the diarach. And the Seifa says no, even if it can be eaten in the shor hagodol through extensive cooking, it's considered to be oichel. The way the latter pshat is Rav is saying is not a machlekes, it's an example. Then it's called a nachal b'shor hagodol b'shloka. What it means in the Reish is anything that can be eaten with the shor hagodol, even though it's only through the means of extended cooking, but that's enough to be considered an oichel in the gdi where you're roasting it for the Korban Pesach. What's an example of it? As Rosh Hashanah, that even though it's not eaten on its own, it's only eaten through extended cooking, that's enough to be considered to be an oichel for gdi arach through shlit. However, if it's something in the shor hagodol that even through extended cooking, it's not an oichel in the gdi arach through shlit. Tanikav also the Rava can bring a right to that. The Brisa says, "Kol nechal b'shor hagodol v'shloka yachal b'gdi arach v'tzli u'mahen." So it says beferish u'mahen rashach havayim v'aschusim v'agidim harakim nidaynu kebasa. But soft gidim are treated like basa. Itma gidim shesef l'hakshus. If you have gidim sinews that are currently in this state, they're soft. But seifin lahakshas, till ultimately they will harden. So Rashi says it's the gidin at the gidin of the neck. So as the animal grows in the young lamb, it's soft, but as it grows, it gets hard. So Rav Yochanan Omer, he says Niman Alav Pesach. He says you look at the current state, and therefore you can include it as basar and can be nimnan with the Korban Pesach. Reish Lakish Amar ain't nimnan aleva Pesach. Reish Lakish says you can't. Rav Yochanan Omer nimnan alem. He says you could basar hashdas leina. You look at the current state. Right now it's soft. It's considered basar. Reish Lakish Amar ain't nimnan alem basar seifas leina. Reish Lakish says you can't because you have to look at their state when it's fully grown. What will its condition be at that state? And if it's too hard, then it's not considered basar. He asked him the rice says, whatever is edible in the shor hagodol is considered to be a basar, food for the harach. What's an example of that? It's Rosh Chanafayim V'Schusim, the cartilage. So it's mashma that's honey in. These are considered to be oichel. Aval gidin shesevin l'hakshas loy, but not the gidin that are going to be turned hard. Amrli, he says no. Tana honey, v'udin lahanach. And he says this is an example, but it's for gidin. It's the same thing. Honey, my time. Why do we consider the cartilage to be a basar? Because because it can be eaten with shor hagodol through extended cooking. So honey nami misachel b'shor hagodol b'shloka, and here also it can be with extended cooking. It could be also eaten the gidin, and therefore we consider it to be basar. And he said to him, when you come to Ravo, Ramile asked him the following stira. Me Amar Rav Yochanan, did he say that you can be part of the chabura? Based on that, you can be nimna with register in the chabura, based on the ability to eat these gidin. Alma basar hashdas lina, and therefore, apparently, you look at the current state of it. I Reish Lakish Rav Yochanan, you have the following shaila or harosh shel egel harach. If you have the soft skin, the soft hide of a young of a young calf. Mao she tame. Is it tame or not? In such a case, is it mekabel tuma? Is it susceptible to tuma or not? Now, basar is mekabel tuma. Something which is not basar and it's not a food is not mekabel tuma. So if you have things that are raw materials are not mekabel tuma until you make them into a kli. When they're fashioned into a kli, the kli is mekabel tuma, but the raw material is not. So now the shaila is on the ore. If you consider the ore to be basar, it's mekabel tuma. If you consider it to be just a hide that's going to be used for leather and to make different kalim, then it's not mekabel tuma until you fashion it into a kli. So he says, "My shutama amrle ein matam." He says it's not matama. I alma basar b'seifas linan. Don't you see from here that it's a stira to what he said? That we look at it in its ultimate state, not the current state. Here we're talking about the or harashel egel harach. It's a tender calf, so currently it's soft and it'll be edible. But since it hardens when it gets older, then it's not edible. So Rav Yochanan over here says it's not matama. Alma, don't you see it's a steer to what he said? And you don't look at the current situation, you look at the ultimate state of it. Amrle, the Ramalach, the one that asks you this kasha, the stira, lechash lekimcha, he's not careful about what he grinds. He's not mayin it careful. Doesn't look into it that deeply. Because because we know that Rav Yochanan was chayzer. And he agreed with Reish Lakish. And he said, Al taknetenu shbalosh yochin ani shaynaisa. He said, don't irritate me, don't agitate me, and don't ask me a kasha. The Mishnah says that the or is matama, that the or of the egel harach is matama, because Al taknetenu, because I learned this b'shbalosh yochin ani shaynaisa. I learned this Mishnah as a das yachin, and we don't pass in that way. So, therefore, you see that he's now rejecting, even though he originally held that way, he's rejecting that, and he says that that's a das yachin, and we don't hold that way, and we say we don't go basar hashta, we go basar saif. So, the Mishnah Shaver says in the Pesach HaTohar, someone breaks the bone of a Pesach, corn pesach, which is tar. So he's over the Isser the Lav of Etzem Loisishbro boy. How is it like our boy? He's over the lav and he gets malchus. Avalam Meiser Betar, but if he leaves over the basar of a Pesach that's tar, so he's over on leaving it over, that unless it's menu, or and in addition, V'hashaver Betame, and if he breaks a bone of a korban Pesach which is Tome, Ein Aloikes Harabayim, he does not get malchus. So the Gemara will explain. Look, the Gemara Bishlam and Masechet, we understand that if he leaves over from a korban Pesach, which is Tohar, that he doesn't get malchus. We understand that because the sign of the Brisa says, it says, don't leave over from the korban Pesach until the morning. It says what's left over to the morning, that has to be burnt in the fire. So therefore, and it now puts an essay. If a person did leave it over, what should be done? What should be done is to burn it. So that's the consequence of leaving it over. To teach you that you don't get malchus because it's a lav hanitik la'aseh. The Torah says that if it's left over, what's the consequence? Burn it. Not malchus, but burn it. Divrei Rav Yehuda. That's the sheet of Rav Yehuda. Rav Yaakov Aimer says, Liman Hashem, who said that's not the reason that there's no malchus. I agree with you, there's no malchus, but for a different reason. El mishum da'aveh lav she'ein boi maisa ve'ein loikin alav. It's because it's a lav she'ein boi maisa. There's no action that was done over here. There's no action, and lav she'ein boi maisa ein loikin alav. What did he do? He didn't eat it. He did a non-action. There's no malchus. So we understand, in any event, we understand why Maiseh B'Tar, there's no malchus. Ella Shever B'Tomim and Nolan. Where do we know? How do we know that if one breaks the bone of a korban Pesach, which is Tommy, there's no malchus? The Gemara answers, Da'amar Krav Esem Loisishbu boy. It says, Esem Loisishbu, don't break the bone, boy, in it. So it's a miyad, boy, B'Kosher, V'loi B'Posel. It's B'Kosher, but not B'Posel. Ton Rabbanan ve'etzem lo yisishvu boy b'kasha v'lo b'posel. Rabbi Omer, he says, "B'bayis echad yechol." It says that the Korban Pesach has to be eaten in one house. You can't take it out of the house. Ve'esam lo yisishvu boy, and you can't break the bone in. So we say, "Kol haroy la'achila yesh boy mishum shviras etzem, u'she'ein roy la'achila ein boy mishum shviras etzem." So he gives. This is the reason that he gives. He gives the reason is because. Not because of the meat of boy, it says because it's compared to that b'bayis that you have where you eat the Korban Pesach. So where is an issur of breaking the bone? It's where there's a mitzvah of eating Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach was tomei. There's no mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach. You can't eat the Korban Pesach. There's no issur of breaking the bone. My beinayu, where is there enough kamina between the two terutzim, between the two perushim? Rabbi Yirmiyah. Pesach haba betuma beinayu. There's enough kamina in the case where the Korban Pesach comes betuma, where the tzibur is tom. Leman damar kosher, the one that says that only when the korban is kosher is there in issur breaking the bone. High posel. This is considered to be posel, even though it's brought betuma. But as Rashi explains, even though it's brought betuma dechuyi betzibur, it's dechuyi, so it's still considered to be that it's posel. You bring it, but it's still considered to be a korban posel, because he holds tumah dechuyi betzibur. Leman damar roy la'achila, but the one who says it's roy la'achila, hainami roy la'achila, it's nevertheless considered to be roy la'achila. Rav Yosef Omer, he says ki ay gavna, in such a case, no. The kuli alma ein boy mishum shiras hatzim. Everyone would agree that there's no issur shiras hatzim. The Rebbe lakulik also, because Rebbe is coming to be makel. He's coming to add on to the Tadakama and give a case, an additional case where there is no issur shiras hatzim. He's not coming to be machmer on it. So therefore, as the Tzlach explains, therefore, Rebbe also agrees that the esm lo yisishvu boy is to be mamayit, the case of tomei. So therefore, the Rebbe lakulei koasa v'hai ha-poselu, and this way case where it's brought betuma is considered posel. Elo, so what's the nafkamina between them? Elo haisel l'shasa kaishav and nifsali kveinayu. The nafkamina is if it was kosher, it had a period of time when it was kosher and then became posel. That's the difference. Leman damar kosher, the one that says, the Tanakhama says, that it applies to a korban which is kosher, high kosher. The korban is kosher. Now, even though now it's been disqualified, but the avodah was done properly, so it's considered a korban that's kosher because the avodah was done properly. But Lamandam roy lachila, but one who says Rebbe says that it has to be roy lachila, high hashta love roy lachila. Right now it's not roy lachila. Yes, the avodah was done by kasha, but it's not roy lachila because now it became posel. So therefore, he would say it doesn't apply.